It's heroes versus villains as we have a look at the Justice League action Superman versus Lobo. Superman comes with his solar shield and capture claw, while Lobo comes included with his motorcycle. I don't know if you can also see at the very back of Lobo's motorcycle is also the exclusive Mr. Mind. I was finally able to find the set over at Toys R Us, picked it up, and of course before we have a look at the figures and the accessories, let's figure out how tall these are. If you've followed enough of these Justice League reviews, you'll know that the Justice League action figures are roughly about 4.5 inches in height. Lobo, on the other hand, benefits from being slightly taller. He's still around 4.5, but he's closer to about 4.75 of an inch in height. Of course, there's a lot to cover in this particular review, but why don't we start with the figures first? We'll start with Superman because he's just simply repacked from the standalone Superman that we've already received. In fact, there's the two Supermen side by side. Exact same figure, nothing really different from one to the other. I suppose other than the fact that this Superman suffers some poor paint. There's a smear, which of course I did not realize at the time I was buying it, that there's this little smudge by his boot. And equally, he's got a smudge on his foot as well, so I don't know what happened here. He's also got a little bit of paint also by his hand, so QC is specifically on this figure isn't the greatest. Now, it's probably not across the board. I'm sure other Supermen may not have this problem. Well, again, like looking at the one that I had before, there's absolutely no problems with the paint whatsoever on this guy, so I just lucked out. I got the Superman that's got paint smeared all over him, or at the very least on his boot. The Superman, again, nothing really too much to cover base on because we've already had a look at this guy a couple of times with comparisons as well. He does have a cloth cape, which is nice, and they've put a hole through the cape that also goes into the torso, and you can plug any one of the accessories, the Power Connects weapons, into those, which we'll look at in a second. The head is otherwise pretty big. He's a very short and squat figure. You either really like the Justice League action figures or you just absolutely hate them. I have to admit I'm on the fence. I still continue to pick these up because I see potential in the line. But I have to admit that the short, squat nature of them can be slightly off-putting to anybody that's new to collecting these. Especially like the Superman head. Like his head, as I mentioned in the first time I reviewed this guy, I'll mention it again here, his head is way too big and blocky for the size of his body. His head should have been really a lot smaller. Posability, his head rotates all the way around. You've got the hinge also in the shoulders, which unfortunately stopped to about there just by the nature of the way that the shoulders are sculpted. Rotate the arms all the way around. You got the bend at the elbow, a rotation in the hand, waist swivel, legs split via ball joint, forward and back, bend at the knee, and lower leg. I may have to come clean about this. I think if the Justice League action figures didn't have the posability that they did have, I may not entertain the idea of picking up more of these. Being somebody that loved collecting the Justice League Unlimited figures, which were limited at best for articulation. I think they only had like 5 points of articulation. Head, arms, legs. That's me demonstrating. 5 points of articulation. These guys at the very least have a lot more going for them. I keep wanting this to be like the next Justice League cartoon. Of course, there's mention that we're going to get eventually, maybe, I know a lot of people are trying to push for a return of the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, and maybe eventually if that does happen, we may get new toys. But in the meantime, this is kind of like a nice settling point for me, at least, picking up Justice League Unlimited toys through the process of picking up Justice League action figures. They're kind of tying me over, so to speak, so that's why I keep picking them up. Superman does come with a shield, which is kind of crystallized. You could really describe this any which way that you want. It looks like a honeycomb, really, but it's made up of two halves. Those two halves come together, right there, just like the Beatles sang. And there's a peg here, a peg hole here. What an old reference I just made. I realize that. I've just like lost all of my younger viewers. Everybody's like, oh, Beatles, what is he talking about? Anyways, these do peg together, peg hole, You peg these together. I mean, you could really have them independently separate from one another. The shield also can peg into Superman's back, like that. I haven't tried it yet with the smaller stump. Let's give that a try, see if that fits. It does, but yeah, it does as well, but it's really intended for the larger peg. The shield also can be fit into Superman's hand, both as just one single shield, or what you can also do too is attach the two shields halves together to give you a much broader Superman shield. Part of me wanted this to be a green shield, but then it occurred to me later I should have had a V8. A green shield would usually indicate kryptonite, and I probably wouldn't want to give Superman a kryptonite shield. It would be somewhat ironic giving Superman something to defend himself being made of the one substance that can kill him. The irony didn't fall short on me. He does also have like a little claw attachment. We'll just put him down for a second, providing he'll stand. It does come with a claw attachment, and this just kind of, it's called a capture claw. I suppose in theory you could rotate these around to fit around, say, the waist of a character if you wanted to have him capturing anything. There's also the peg on the back, or on the underside, so again, all the peg holes, whether it be the hand, whether it be the back, or the weapons themselves, are really the same size. So you could put it on his back, you could also put the claw into his hand, just like that. And you can display him with that. But wait, there's more. What you can also do too, again, we'll go back to getting him to stand. The packaging advertises also that you can get together a space armor. Ooh, that sounds exciting. So you're gonna go ahead and take the two halves, detach them from one another. You wanna have the peg here facing, I think it's facing down, if memory serves me correctly, but there's holes on the top here, and of course pegs. I'll kind of give you an indication as to what we're going to be doing with this. Those peg into place like so. Then you're going to take the other half, peg that into place like so. You want to make sure that the peg is facing, this part is facing to the top. And then you can bring these around if you want. And then this just attaches to Superman. You can either really just fit it over top of him, or if you want to get a more secure fit, you can take the shield and plug that also into his back. And it gives him this sort of makeshift, somewhat ridiculous looking armor, but at the very least you can make use of the same component pieces, and again you can just mix and match them. So that is Superman. Of course, the price of entry here, the cost of admission, I'm sure anybody would agree, would be likely here Lobo. And Lobo looks pretty good. He seems slightly sickly in his coloring. Instead of getting a gray, he almost gets something almost like a yellowy gray. He's got this weird kind of tint to the plastic color. I'm not sure really why they went this route, but it kind of makes him look like a toy that you've had for a while that has been in or even, let's say if you've gone to a flea market and somebody is trying to sell these as smoke-free home, a smoke-free home collection. Clearly you can pick it up, probably can give it a smell. It smells like someone's old ashtray. But then also the plastic looks slightly yellowed. I feel I'm almost getting this experience here looking at Lobo. His plastic seems slightly more yellowed than what I would have enjoyed. I think a more closer to a gray would have worked a little bit better. Big smile on Lobo's face, as one would expect to find. He's, again, a big, broader figure. He's kind of really what Swamp Thing should have been. Swamp Thing should have been a little bit of a taller figure. Like what we got here with Lobo. I guess this potential here, now that we've seen a figure this big, that maybe bigger figures could be scaled in this size and not always having to go the route of going this size for their sizing. Lobo does come with an accessory. He comes with a hook. And I guess if you want to use your imagination, you could pretend like this is kryptonite, which would make more sense for Lobo to be wielding and not necessarily a kryptonite shield. That makes still no sense. That the irony, of course, I'm well aware of the irony of that. The peg, there's a peg on the one side of the translucent green hook here, which I guess in theory you could plug into the back of Lobo's back. It's a good place to store it if you don't want to be displaying him in hand, especially for the fact that he's going to be riding his space chopper. Probably would make sense that you would put the hook elsewhere. I have to sadly admit that his lower leg is slightly loose around the knee area. Not this leg here, but this leg here is insanely loose. Sadly. Posability on this guy, his head rotates left and right, despite for the fact he's got very large, flowing hair. Gene Simmons would be certainly impressed. His head does rotate left and right. Not really up and down, but at the very least left and right. Arms hinge outward. You can also rotate the arms all the way around, bend at the elbow, rotation at the arms, and rotation in the hands. Actually, no, that's not correct. Let me scratch that from the record. His arm only rotates. I thought for some reason he actually had wrist articulation, but that not be the case. Waist swivels. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Arms or legs split out to about there. I can only imagine how uncomfortable that is for Lobo currently. Legs go forward and back, and as we'd already discussed, his legs bend at the knee, and they also rotate the lower leg. He has peg holes on the undersides of his feet. Same can be said for Superman, but he doesn't really have anything to stand atop of. He can sit atop of, which I guess is the best segue to having a look at this pretty cool looking motorcycle. But just before we do that, one of the other accessories to come included with this set is a very exclusive Mr. Mind. A little, almost, I guess he is a caterpillar, painted on the back in black. Otherwise that, he's just cast in like a green plastic. It almost for a second looks like perhaps he's got stickers for his eyes. They don't look, by the way that they're reflecting light, that they have been painted on. Rather, it looks like they've been stuck on. I'm not going to try to attempt to try to peel, because I really don't want to damage his eyes. He does have a peg hole on, I want to say, the undersides of his feet, but he has a peg hole on the underside of his body. You can go ahead and take the motorcycle, and on the back, there's a little peg right there. Now you can take Mr. Mind and plug him just on the back. It makes more sense. You can't plug him this way because the hole's not far enough back, if you can see it there. So you really can only peg him from the front. And he can be an onlooker as Lobo rides away on his chopper here. So, cue the segue of looking at the chopper. It's a really nice combination of blacks, silvers, all cast in this glorious plastic here. It's a really nice looking release here. And it's one of the few times that we've gotten a vehicle. We've gotten, of course, motorcycles and jets and stuff like that, but they always just seem like more of a kid throw-in than anything else. Here we have a legit vehicle that you could imagine a character should rightfully have. Lobo should have his motorcycle, so I'm glad that we actually get that in the Justice League Action releases. Primarily only cast in black plastic, and then anything that's silver looks like it's been cast in a separate plastic and simply just assembled. So these struts on the front have been plugged into place. The front's been plugged. No assembly is required here. The skull also is in silver plastic, as well as the handles and the back thrusters. They've also made this a brown plastic cast in its own color. So really, there's very little in the way of paint. I suppose there's like typographing on the side here. They've printed on the flames. Those are not stickers. You wouldn't be able to remove them or anything like that. And then he does have wheels on the undersides. I'm looking at this, and you can see that there's these two little slot holes. Technically, they are because they were attached to the packaging like so. But I guess in theory, if you had yourself small enough nails, you could mount this on a wall. Oh, see where my creative mind is going. You can mount this onto a wall on an angle, almost as if Lobo's riding up the wall. Just a little idea that you could possibly do if you wanted to. There is technically a gimmick involved here. There are two blades, which you probably can see concealed in the little slotted areas of the bike. To activate those, you're just going to take the skull and you're going to push it down. And you can almost start seeing how that's going to come into play. Just bring it down, and it's going to bring out these... I guess they are more guns than they are blades. They're cast in translucent, or like a translucent green plastic, which makes me obviously initially think that they were blades, but they look more like guns than anything else. And then you can just bring those back up and tuck them back into place until you want to activate the feature again. You can also do the same thing by bringing this up and down, but you probably will see it's a lot easier to bring them down and simply just push them back up. Because if you try to bring up the skull, you'll keep hitting your thumb with the guns as you are bringing them up. So it's probably easier just to kind of tuck them up as you're going about you know, putting them back in their storage. We can go ahead and take Lobo, and we're just going to bend his legs slightly. His knees don't have the biggest amount of hingeability, but you can slide him right down into the seat area of his chopper, and then you can take the handles. The handles, I will admit, are broad. They're not easy to fit into his hand, and equally so, they're hard to get him out of his hand. But at the very least, it does hold him in place. There's very little chance he's going anywhere. This is the Dairy Queen Blizzard. Every time you get a Dairy Queen Blizzard, the staff, if they know what's good for them, I mean, that's the policy book after all, they'll go like this with your Blizzard. And you would only hope it's not going to fall out. It'd be the one time that ice cream is way too soft and it goes everywhere. And little Mikey, who has just joined the ranks of Dairy Queen, unfortunately gets let go. Lobo doesn't sit very low in his bike. I mean, he does have this big kind of gap happening here. A lot of that can be chalked up to the fact that I've got the hook in his hand. We'll bring that down. There we go. Sits a little bit further down. As you can see, though, his feet don't really attach to anything. They just sit loosey while he's flying through the skies. A nice release, though, the fact that we would get this. I mean, I would have been happy just with a Lobo release as a single card, but I'm glad that they would have actually packaged him along with the Harley. If you've already picked up the Superman kind of is just more so a bonus, but 9 times out of 10, if you probably have already been picking up these, you may already have a Superman, so you've kind of got now an extra Superman kicking around. I will admit that taking the shield and turning into space armor looks a little hokey on the Man of Steel. It basically looks like I've just taken 2 halves of a shield and put it over top of his torso, which I guess essentially is what I've done. To be fair, though, and to the credit of Justice League Action, the line really benefits from having these mix and match accessories, taking weapons and turning them into other things and being shared with the other figures that come out in future waves. This particular set, I think the praise can be said more so for the Lobo and the fact that he comes with his motorcycle than for the fact that we get the Man of Steel. Superman, if you've already picked up Superman, there's really no reason whatsoever why you would be getting excited for yet another Superman to be packaged. At the very least, they could have saw this as an opportunity to do something different with Superman. I don't know really what they could have done differently, even at the very least. Painting his eyes red, giving him the quasi look of heat vision, could have at least separated him from looking like the other Superman that we've already released. Mr. Mind is also a nice little inclusion in this set, and all the more reasoning why you would want to get the set. But I think the price of admission, something that I've used that term frequently over the course of reviews, the price of admission for this set is definitely Lobo with the motorcycle. Lobo would have been benefited from either just a single card release, but obviously you had to package him with the motorcycle. I think Superman really wasn't necessary in this set. If they had just scaled it down and only had it as a release of just Lobo and his motorcycle, I think it could have gone a long way. But I guess Mattel's logic is a kid may now benefit from picking up this set. If they haven't already got a Superman, they can now have Superman battling against Lobo in space. The set now is currently available in toys stores and other retail stores. I just finally lucked out and find this at my local Toys R Us. And I think the price point of this was under $20. I can't remember what the price actually was, but it was probably about $18 to $20 on it. So it's not the most expensive of sets, and you do get 2. Technically you get 3, but you get 2 action figures and you get 1 standalone Mr. Mind. So I think it's worth picking up this set if you're a fan of Justice League Action. Today we were having a look at the Justice League Action. This was the Power Connects Superman versus Lobo and a little worm. If you guys want to check out some more Justice League Action reviews, there's a playlist on this channel called Justice League Action. You can have a look at all the stuff that I've reviewed in previous videos. More videos, guys, also will be coming your way, so stay tuned for those. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.